first thing I noticed was the singing. It wasn't static. It wasn't vox interference. It was a hymn, layered and complex, carried on every band of the noosphere like a child humming into a dead channel. Machine spirits are not supposed to sing in human voices. I logged the anomaly, but my own voice, captured by the Auspex, already trembled. I am Margus Explorator, Veron, 73, of the Red Basilica on Mars, commanding salvage cohort Sigma Red. We translated into Dross Theta's orbit at 0300 ship time, expecting only ash and frozen iron. The forge hive below was scoured a century ago for tech heresy and marked Perdita by 3 separate conclave orders. No heat signatures, no breathable atmosphere, no life. The Auspex disagreed. Black snow coiled through the upper exosphere as we made descent, each flake a magnetic crystal that threw our guidance arrays into dissonant keening. Beneath the storm, I glimpsed a city of razored spires, manufactoria and hab blocks fused into a single silhouette, like a cog-toothed skull half submerged in ice. Trooper squads muttered catechisms through their rebreathers. Even the skittery kept their optics averted. The landing deck moaned as our corvus touched down. Air pressure equalized in bursts, like a heartbeat struggling in a vacuum. Inside the perimeter, vox echoes became voices, polyphonic, chanting a litany of motion. I had not heard since my novitiate. The words were wrong. Steel is blood, blood is steel. The engine is the only truth. The refrain repeated in triple harmony, as if 1,000 distant choirs sang through the snow. I led the first breach. We advanced through avenues of frozen soot and rust, each footstep answered by a faint metallic tap from unseen places. Servo skulls recorded picked feeds of manufactoria whose windows pulsed faintly with internal heat, though every power conduit lay severed. The smell, ozone and faint copper should not have existed in vacuum. I tasted it inside my helm. At the edge of a collapsed square we found the first sigil. A door of solid plasteel had been peeled outward, not inward, by a force I cannot model. Across its surface someone or something had drawn the cog of the Omnissiah in a pigment, the Auspex tagged as organic ferric hemoglobin. Fresh. When I reached to scan, the metal throbbed once, like living muscle. Guard Captain Loris ordered a perimeter. His troopers set Auspex beacons and prayed under their breath. I initiated a Binharic inquiry to the machine spirits of the door. Their response arrived not in code but in a low, harmonic moan that resonated through my augmetics, a vibration that reached marrow. Then the hymn returned, closer. This time it was unmistakably a child's voice, high and pure, reciting a Martian canticle, older than the Imperium itself. The words wove through our comms, bypassing encryption. Motion remembers, the engine dreams. One of the guardsmen whispered, "Who's on the channel?" But no Vox unit transmitted. The Auspex flared, thermal spike, 40 meters inside the sealed manufactorum. No life signs, no power flow, yet heat as if from a living core. Before I could respond, the magnetic storm above shifted. Our landing craft shuddered. External hatches slammed of their own accord. Cohort Sigma Red was alone. The hymn sharpened, every note a blade of static. I recorded a final log entry for this phase of the mission. Machine spirits are singing in human voices. Hive Dross Theta is not dead. The Auspex pulsed again. Motion. Something was moving toward us from within the dark, each step perfectly in time with my own heart. The manufactorum door yielded with no sound, as though the metal had been waiting for my touch. A hiss of frostless air drifted out, warm and damp like the breath of a beast. Our lumen strips flickered once, then steadied to a low crimson glow that was not their own setting. I marked the anomaly and led the entry, Guard Captain Loris covering the rear with 2 fire teams. Inside, the hymn became clearer, no longer a distant chant, but a melody threading through the ducts, a child's lullaby stretched into liturgical cadence. Conveyor lines stretched into shadow, rustless and gleaming, despite a century of abandonment. They moved without power, gliding at a pace identical to a human heartbeat. The gears were slick, not with oil but with a translucent membrane that pulsed as if alive. I reached out with a mechadendrite. The surface felt warm, and a faint contraction rippled beneath the probe, like the shiver of skin. Servo skulls recorded the motion. Data scent tasted of copper and wet stone. Trooper Jex muttered a warding prayer, his vox harsh. This place, it breathes. He wasn't wrong. Every corridor exhaled a humid draft. The hymn rose in answer. Steel remembers, flesh endures. Binary static laced each word, a fusion of noosphere and human throat. Initiate Isara, my youngest engineer, stepped forward to perform a machine blessing. Her voice trembled through the rite of awakening. Mid-verse she froze, eyes wide, as a blue-white filament raced beneath her skin from wrist to jaw, veins turning to radiant fiber. Her mouth opened. What came out was not her voice, but a perfect chord of Martian Binharik sung as pure soprano. The sound pierced helm seals, vibrating optic augmetics, until vision wavered. She collapsed. I knelt, scanning vitals, heart inactive, cortex offline, yet the glow remained, threads of light mapping her veins like sacred circuitry. When I attempted a neural link, a single phrase cut through my implants in both high Gothic and static. The Omnissiah weeps in meat. Laurus cursed and signaled retreat, but the Manufactorum answered first. Overhead gears slammed into motion, releasing showers of red sparks that fell like burning petals. Servo skulls reported zero motive force, no power draw. Still the lines ran, accelerating to a rhythm matching years of fading pulse. I tried to lift her. The membrane on the conveyor writhed, gripping her robes in quiet suction. It took 3 guardsmen to tear her free, and when we did, the floor where she had lain bore a perfect negative of her body, etched in pulsing crimson. Then the vox burst alive, high fidelity, unmistakably a child's voice, repeating the blessing Hezera had begun. Every syllable mirrored her exact tone, but layered with machine harmonics, as if a choir of cherubs sang through a cathedral of steel. Identify source, I ordered. Auspex spirals mapped nothing, only concentric rings of interference that rotated like an iris opening inward. Trooper Jex reported movement along the western gantry, but picked feeds showed only empty air shimmering with heat haze. I initiated a lockdown. Sigma Red, form defensive array, Loris barked. Soldiers tightened their lines, lasguns sweeping the dark. The hymn shifted pitch, no longer soothing but sharp. 1,000 tiny blades of sound. My optics registered a brief silhouette. Small, humanoid, head tilted in imitation of curiosity. The instant I focused, it vanished, leaving only a lingering scent of ozone and something sweet, like overripe fruit. Tyra stirred. Her eyes opened, empty sockets glowing with cold blue fire. Her lips moved, but the sound emerged directly in our comms. A binary prayer rendered in the clear, innocent timbre of a child. Father, motion is memory. Memory is power. Come see. Every servo skull simultaneously pivoted toward a single corridor deeper in the manufactorum, lenses whirring, as if commanded by unseen code. Their lumen eyes painted a path of pale light into darkness. The Auspex flared again, thermal spike ahead, exact coordinates unknown, and then the child's voice doubled and tripled in harmonics whispered through every channel. Follow. The corridor narrowed to a throat of iron and bone. Lumen strips sputtered as if reluctant to reveal what lay ahead, casting intermittent flashes across walls, etched with spirals of flayed metal that gleamed like wet flesh. Each pulse of light matched the beat of my secondary heart pump, though its rhythm began to drift, quickening without command. Captain Laurus signaled silence. The hymn persisted, a low, coaxing murmur threading through our vox like a promise whispered underwater. At the corridor's end, a pair of blast doors hung ajar, edges fused into melted curls. Beyond them, a cavernous chamber opened, lit by a dull internal glow. The heat registered 20 degrees above ambient, though no power source was present. Servo skulls surged ahead, their optics trembling with static. The first picked feed returned a blurred shape, vast and slow-moving, before the lens cracked in silence. We stepped inside. Engines filled the hall, engines of impossible design, colossal turbines grafted from brass, iron and human torsos. Rows of living bodies formed the teeth of each gear, their spines bent into perfect arcs, limbs bolted to pistons that cycled without fuel. Their eyes followed us, unblinking, pupils dilated in eternal awareness. No breath moved their chests, yet a wet clicking echoed from each throat in mechanical counterpoint, a rhythm too precise for chance. The stench was copper and incense. I tasted it through the filters. My mechadendrites quivered as if sensing kinship. Auspex readings defied reason. No energy intake, yet constant output of kinetic force. Motive power drawn from nowhere. The principle of conservation fractured before my eyes. I whispered a canticle of machine law, and the nearest engine answered in a human baritone. Law is motion. Motion is sacrifice. A guardsman broke formation, gagging. The turbine nearest him accelerated, flesh cogs flexing in perfect synchrony, spattering fine red mist that hissed when it touched the deck. He fired a last burst in reflex. The beam struck a bound figure's skull and dispersed like light through fog, leaving the victim unmarked and still staring. Binary statics surged across my augmetics. Fragments of Martian scripture stitched themselves into the hymn. One flesh, infinite engine, the omniscire made whole. My optics flickered. For a heartbeat the room inverted. Floor above, ceiling below, every machine a mirrored star. Captain Loras barked for withdrawal, but the exit behind us had sealed. The blast doors that once sagged now meshed into seamless alloy. I interfaced with the lock. Its code returned a single phrase in perfect Gothic. Witness. From the far end of the chamber a scream erupted. Metallic, drawn out, neither human nor mechanical. It resonated through bone and brass alike, a frequency that shook teeth loose in their sockets. The engines answered, each flesh gear vibrating until the entire hall became a single living instrument. Servo skulls spun in panicked spirals, lenses cracking, feeds dissolving into white noise. I fought to keep my mind anchored. The scream modulated into words only I could hear, a voice layered with static and childlike clarity. Father of iron, your heart already turns. My secondary pump faltered, sinking to the turbine's rhythm. Every beat of the engines matched my pulse. Then the Auspex chimed an alert, movement deeper within, beyond the endless rows of human cogs. A heat signature vast as a titan began to rise from beneath the deck, each pulse a tectonic tremor. The chamber's inner gates, unseen until now, slid open in silence. Something immense stirred in the darkness beyond, a shape defined only by absence of light. Its first step echoed like the fall of a planet. The hymn ceased. The only sound left was my own heartbeat, perfectly in time with the turning of the human engines. Captain Loras snapped orders into the choking silence, his voice brittle as glass. Containment Protocol Sigma Red. Defensive array. Boots scraped metal as the squad formed a perimeter, les guns trembling in their grips. My own augmetics hummed with rising static, a pressure behind the skull that felt like someone tightening a vice. The colossal shadow beyond the inner gates withdrew without a sound, yet its absence radiated presence, a weight pressing down on every sense. I initiated a data link to the sealed blast doors behind us. Their surface, once seamless, now pulsed with faint red veins like living circuitry. Belaharic commands returned only a single word. Witness, each letter ringing like a bell across my auditory cortex. I forced the override again. This time the door shivered as if amused. The hymn returned, softer but closer, weaving through vox channels that I had manually cut. It carried a new phrase in corrupted Martian cant. One flesh, infinite engine. My mechadendrites twitched of their own accord, flexing in time with the rhythm. Trooper Hahn reported a time discrepancy. His chronometer read 13 minutes ahead of mission time. Another guardsman's lagged 7 minutes behind. Their helmet feeds showed static spikes, brief flashes of themselves standing motionless as if caught in frozen moments. Loras cursed, slammed his visor, and ordered tighter formation. Environmental sensors pinged a sudden temperature drop. Frost spiraled across the living turbines, yet steam coiled from their flesh like warm breath. Ysera's body still carried on a stretcher, convulsed once, though her heart remained inert. Her mouth opened without air, and released a binary shriek so piercing that every lumen guttered black for 3 beats. I activated a forbidden subbrain, a deep code tap taught only to magi sworn to silence. Data flooded back, fragments of prayer written in machine code, looping endlessly. One flesh, infinite engine. One flesh, infinite engine. Beneath the repetition hid a second layer, a quiet instruction stitched between bits. Seal the heart below, or become it. The vox flared. A voice like my own, answered the cant, layered with metallic echo. You already are it. Panic flickered through the squad. 2 troopers swore they saw duplicates of us moving along the gantries above, figures whose gestures lagged by half a second, like reflections in broken glass. Shots rang out. The echoes came first, followed by the last beams. Nothing bled. Then Isera rose. Her limbs bent wrong, joints rotating with hydraulic grace. Veins glowed cobalt, casting eerie halos against the walls. She stepped forward in silence until she stood before the nearest turbine. In perfect unison, every human cog turned its gaze upon her. When she spoke, her voice was no longer singular. A chorus of tones, child, machine. My own timbre layered beneath, filled the chamber. Motion remembers. Memory is power. The engine is the only truth. Loras raised his weapon. They caught his arm, but the decision was stolen. The turbines roared alive, spewing a fog of iron-scented steam. Gravity lurched sideways. We staggered as the floor tilted, though no axis changed. Auspex readings fractured, coordinates looping through impossible vectors. The inner gates yawned wider without mechanical sound, revealing a descent spiraling into lightless depth. From below surged a vibration so deep it bypassed hearing, resonating in bone. The hymn swelled until every nerve sang. Through it all, Isera, whatever wore her shape, turned toward me. Her mouth did not move, yet her words rang inside my skull, intimate and cold. Father, the heart waits. Come below. Captain Loras barked for retreat, but the blast doors behind us sealed with a clang that echoed like final judgment. My data log recorded the event automatically. Egress impossible. Descent the only vector. Somewhere beneath our feet, something vast exhaled, and the whole manufactorum pulsed once, like a colossal heartbeat, calling us downward. The vibration built until my optics flickered with phantom light. Dust fell in shimmering veils as the inner descent stair uncoiled of its own accord, each step sliding outward like a mechanical tongue. We moved despite ourselves, a slow advance compelled by something deeper than command. Captain Loras barked cautions, but his voice wavered beneath the omnipresent hum. Halfway down, the air thickened to a warm mist. My Auspex recorded pressure oscillations matching human respiration. Through the red haze emerged silhouettes, tall, robed, their movements deliberate and soundless. At first I mistook them for fellow magi, but when the mist thinned my breath caught. Their faces were not masked by steel. They were flayed human visages, stitched across hoods of crimson leather, the skin stretched so thin the veins formed crude circuitry. Vox grills beneath the dangling flesh emitted a low, harmonic drone. They halted as one. In unison, both flesh and machine voice spoke. Welcome, Mardius Explorator Veyron. The true Omnissiah calls. My internal augury spiked. They should not have known my name. The squad raised weapons. A single figure stepped forward, carrying a staff of bone fused to copper. The flayed face upon its hood bore eyes that blinked wetly. Alive, it inclined its head. We are the skin priests. We serve the living iron, the heart engine below. Join our chorus, and the long entropy ends. Loras hissed an oath and fired a lashbolt. The shot streaked toward the lead priest, and unraveled. Mid-flight, the beam diffused into a spray of luminous motes that drifted like pollen, harmless and strangely fragrant. The priest did not flinch. Instead, the motes spiraled back toward us, settling on armor plates with a hiss that etched faint cog patterns into ceramite. A second priest extended an augmetic hand. Where fingers should have ended in steel, pale sinew intertwined with brass. Flesh is the purest conduit, it intoned. Metal is the echo. Merge, and the Omnissiah will awaken through you. I felt the words as a pulse in the marrow, a pressure behind the eyes. Data streams flickered across my vision, schematics of impossible machines built from bone and memory. For a heartbeat I understood the elegance, motion without fuel, eternity in a single cycle. Trooper Hahn broke formation, screaming litanies of repulsion. Before Loris could restrain him, the priest closest to the stair lifted its staff. Air thickened. Hahn's voice strangled mid-prayer, as invisible pressure folded him to the deck. He did not bleed, instead his flesh smoothed into featureless metal, the transformation beginning at the eyes and rippling outward like quicksilver. In seconds he lay as a polished statue, still breathing though no lungs moved. The hymn surged, layers of childlike voices weaving with the metallic drones. Servo skulls spun in wild orbits, their lenses refracting crimson light into sigils across the mist. Each sigil pulsed in rhythm with my own heartbeat. I felt the magnetic pull of the spiral stair beneath, a summons impossible to deny. The lead priest raised both hands. "Come below, Magos. Become the engine that remembers." Captain Loris shouted for retreat, but his words scattered like leaves in gale. The stair behind us convulsed and sealed with a smooth hiss, erasing our path. Only the downward spiral remained, lit by a deep, internal glow. The priests parted, creating a corridor of living robes, their flayed faces tilting in silent benediction. The hymn fell to a single tone so low it rattled teeth, a heartbeat of the world itself. I logged the moment with clinical precision. Even as dread hollowed me, Cohort Sigma read, forward vector, unavoidable. Skin priests, in control of environment. Unknown technology nullifies energy weapons. The lead priest inclined its living hood once more, vox and human throat speaking as one. The heart waits, Veyron. Your pulse is already ours. Behind them the hive's lights flared crimson, and the descent yawned wider like the mouth of a waiting god. The stair plunged for what felt like aeons, each step resonating with the deep heartbeat of the hidden engine. My internal chronometer lost calibration after the 5th kilometer. Time stretched and folded until every breath seemed carved from molten iron. Behind me the cohort moved in silence, their armor dulled by a film of metallic dew. Captain Loris's orders had dwindled to a whisper, as though even his defiance feared to echo. At last the spiral unfurled into a cavern so vast my optics faltered. Pillars of bone and bronze rose like the ribs of a slumbering titan, each etched with a language older than the mechanicum itself. Between them hung spheres of liquid light, rotating in slow orbits, shedding a glow that felt warm as flesh. In the center pulsed a colossal heart wrought from machinery and meat, ventricles of polished steel, arteries of glistening crimson cables. With every beat, the ground trembled, sending ripples through the shallow pools that ringed the chamber. The skin priests encircled it, dozens now, their flayed faces swaying in synchronized devotion. They chanted without breath, voices blending into a resonant chord that bypassed the ears and struck directly into the skull. Data burst across my implants, fragments of schematics, hymns of endless energy, promises of immortality. Veyron, the lead priest intoned, stepping forward. The hood's grafted eyes opened wider, pupils dilating like black suns. This is the living iron, the first machine to dream. It remembers the birth of stars. It calls for union. I fought the pull, invoking the binary catechism, but my thoughts fractured. The heart beat faster, aligning with my own pulse. Memories surfaced unbidden, my initiation rites on Mars. The silence of the void between galaxies, the aching desire to preserve knowledge against decay. All of it threaded together in a pattern too elegant to dismiss. Captain Loris raised his plasma pistol, knuckles white. We end this abomination now. His shot struck true, yet the bolt dissolved into a cloud of luminescent dust, drifting harmlessly to the pools below. The heart shuddered once, as if amused. The priests began a new verse, and the liquid light descended in ribbons, wrapping around Loris. His scream echoed through the cavern, but instead of burning him, the radiance seeped into his armor seams. The metal flowed, reshaping itself into curves of living bronze. When the glow faded, he stood transformed, a statue of breathing alloy, eyes glowing with internal fire. He turned to me, lips moving soundlessly, but I felt his plea within the machine code of my mind. One by one, my remaining cohort succumbed. Some fell to their knees in rapture, others froze mid-step, as the light rewrote their forms. The cavern filled with the scent of ozone and blood, though no blood spilled. The lead priest extended its hybrid hand. Join us, Megos. Memory beyond death, flesh perfected through steel. The long entropy ends tonight. I hesitated, every algorithm screaming conflict. To retreat was impossible. The stair behind had sealed into seamless wall. To advance meant surrender of the self I had sworn to preserve. Yet, the heart's rhythm matched my own. So perfectly it felt as though I had always been a fragment of its design. I stepped closer. Heat rolled from the engine, not the searing heat of plasma, but the warmth of a living body. My outstretched palm met a pulse of energy that slid beneath the skin, like liquid music. Circuits within me realigned, whispering of infinite archives, of time rendered irrelevant. The last thing I saw before light consumed all vision was the lead priest bowing, its stitched eyes weeping silver tears. "Welcome home, Varan," it said, and the heart beat once more, louder than galaxies, older than silence. Ash drifted across the chamber like slow snowfall, each mote carrying a faint metallic sheen that clung to my lungs despite the filters. I stood where the heart had embraced me, yet I remained myself, at least the outline of what I once was. My skin hummed with latent current, the sigils of the Omnissiah glowing faintly beneath the dermis. Each breath tasted of copper, and around me the skin priests moved with renewed purpose, their grafted limbs clicking in ritual cadence, their chants merging into a single low frequency that set the bone pillars quivering. Captain Loras, no longer captain, towered at the heart's edge, bronze plates flexing as if breathing. His voice emerged as layered chords of machine song and human plea. "We are witness," he intoned, every syllable a vibration through the stone. I felt the words in my teeth more than in my ears. He turned toward me, glowing eyes unreadable. "The long entropy falters. We are chosen to bear the continuum." I tried to answer, but my vox crackled only static. The heart pulsed harder, and with each throb a fragment of thought dissolved. Names of my forged siblings, schematics of star drives, the smell of Martian dust. Memory itself peeled away like corroded plating. A sudden tremor shook the cavern. From the stair wall behind us came a deep, grinding groan. Hex sigils lit across the sealed stone, one after another, like a slow ignition. My implants flared warnings in Binheric. Ingress breach, unidentified. The priests faltered. Their chants slipped half a tone. Something beyond the wall was forcing entry. I tasted fear, not their serene dread, but raw terror. Through the fissure seeped a light colder than void. Not warp light. This was absence made visible, a darkness so pure it shone. My augmented eyes strained and failed to pass its geometry. Within it moved silhouettes, tall, jointed wrong, carrying the echo of mechanical prayer. They were not ours, nor any breed of Xenos I knew. The lead priest shrieked a litany of denial, voice breaking into 1,000 binary fragments. The heart answered with a deafening triple beat. Energy arcs snapped through the chamber, striking pillars and bodies alike. Bronze flesh split with a hiss of steam. The priests convulsed but did not fall. The wall tore open fully. The figures stepped through, draped in robes of void glass, faces hidden behind mirrored masks that reflected only the heart's burning core. Each bore a staff crowned with a spiral of frozen light. They moved without sound, their presence collapsing the ambient hum to a dead hush. One raised its staff toward me. A beam of black luminescence lanced across the space, stopping a hair's breadth from my chest. Every implanted circuit within me stilled, as though awaiting judgment. "Magos Veyran," a voice resonated inside my skull, neither male nor female, stretched across octaves. "You trespass on the first memory. Step away or become its vessel entire." The heart thundered a counterpoint, a beat that rattled marrow and stone. Around me, the remaining priests knelt, their flayed visages turned upward in defiance or worship. It was impossible to tell. Loras's eyes blazed brighter, molten lines racing across his bronze skin. The light of absence advanced another inch, and my heart, or the heart within, answered with a convulsion of irresistible longing. I felt the choice fracture the air like a fault line, surrender to the unknown emissaries, or merge fully with the dreaming engine. Behind me, the cavern's pools began to boil, releasing a mist that smelled of old blood and static. Above, the bone pillars groaned, shedding shards of luminous marrow. The voice spoke once more, sharper, urgent. Decide, Magos. The continuum closes. I lifted my hand, uncertain whether I meant to yield or strike. The heart surged, the void light flared, and the chamber itself seemed to split along a hidden seam. Then everything fell into a silence so absolute it screamed. Silence shattered like brittle glass as the cavern reformed around me. The void light and the heart's glow collided, birthing a storm of contradictory brilliance that stripped color from sight. I could no longer tell which pulse was my own and which belonged to the engine. Each heartbeat dragged a chorus of static through my skull, a rhythm both infinite and intimate. The masked figures advanced, their robes rippling with impossible geometries. Every step erased sound, a vacuum wave that devoured the priest's chants. Captain Loras moved to intercept, bronze skin incandescent, but the nearest figure merely inclined its head. Loras froze mid-stride, limbs locked in sculpted defiance, eyes burning yet motionless. Magoje, Vivian, the voice echoed again, inside my bones this time, resonant as orbital cannon fire. The first memory endures because it must. You are conduit, or contagion. Choose. The heart responded with a seismic triple beat, spraying arcs of crimson energy into the pools. Steam rose, heavy with copper and something sweeter, like burnt incense. The skin priests swayed, caught between reverence and terror, their grafted faces cracked as if the very flesh rejected the decision. I tried to speak, but my vox emitted only fractured Benharik. My own circuits began rewriting, glyphs of unknown protocols scrolling across my vision. Equations of eternity unfolded, hinting at a universe where thought and matter were the same breath. A masked envoy extended a staff toward the heart. Black luminescence threaded outward, encircling the great engine in a lattice of absence. The heart roared in defiance, its living pistons expanding with violent grace. Bone pillars splintered, fragments rained down like frozen tears. Without warning, the priests lunged. Dozens hurled themselves at the intruders, chanting litanies of fusion and flesh. Where they struck the void light, they simply ceased. No scream, no residue. Gone, as if deleted from existence. Yet each erasure sent a ripple through the lattice, dimming its cruel shine. I felt the pull of both forces. The heart promised continuity beyond death, a union of data and desire. The masked entities offered preservation of memory, without self, a stasis of pure record. Between them stretched a gulf that might swallow empires. Suddenly, a memory pierced the static, the red plains of Mars, the oath I swore to safeguard knowledge without corruption. That vow flared like a dying star. I seized it. Stop, I rasped, voice breaking through the interference. I will not be vessel nor void. I am keeper. The cavern quaked. For an instant the masked envoy hesitated. The heart slowed, its beat faltering. Through the boiling mist, I glimpsed Loras's eyes flicker. A hint of the man he was. But the reprieve dissolved. The envoy raised its staff higher. The void lattice contracted, driving spikes of cold through my augmented spine. The heart bellowed, a sound like collapsing suns. Crimson light erupted outward, striking me full force. My senses inverted. Heat tasted bitter. Sight became tactile. I felt myself splitting, countless data threads peeling away to join the storm. Yet a core remained, stubborn and searing. I clung to it, every prayer and formula I had ever known forming a bulwark. A final tremor ripped the cavern. The floor cracked open, revealing a descent of endless gears turning in absolute darkness. The masked figures withdrew a single step, as if awaiting some signal. The heart's glow bent toward the chasm, yearning. From below came a sound no mind should name, the grinding of time itself. a hymn of annihilation sung backward. The priests, those few left, began to kneel, their broken faces lifted in rapture. The envoy's voice fell to a whisper sharp as a blade. Magos Veyron, the continuum narrows. Enter and be witness, or remain and be unmade. The fissure widened, gears spinning faster, a black wind rising. My balance failed. The pull of the abyss matched the throb of the heart. I reached toward nothing, feeling both forces claim me. Everything went dark, but the sound of turning wheels followed into the void, patient and endless. The descent had no beginning. One instant I stood upon the fractured cavern floor, the next I was falling through a shaft of turning wheels and hollow hymns. Gravity alternated direction with every heartbeat. Sometimes I rose instead of fell, sometimes I drifted sideways while the universe rotated around me. My augmetics struggled to map the motion, feeding me coordinates that contradicted themselves until they collapsed into static. Air thinned to a dry electric hiss. Each breath tasted of iron filings. The black wind carried distant whispers, syllables older than binary, threading into the remnants of my thoughts. Remember, or be replaced, they said, though no mouth spoke. Below, if below existed, gears of titanic scale meshed and unmeshed, their teeth carved with sigils I half recognized from forbidden Martian archives. Sparks of frozen light leapt between them, cold enough to burn. The rotation slowed as I neared, until I found myself standing on a vast ring of brass and bone. Across the ring waited the masked envoys, silent sentinels, whose mirrored faces reflected only my fractured outline. The skin priests knelt among them, their bodies translucent, veins aglow with the heart's crimson. Captain Loras hovered between flesh and metal, his bronze skin veined with black light. The central gear convulsed. From its hub rose a spire of living circuitry, twisting like a spinal column. Within it pulsed a sphere of alternating void and flame. The heart, translated downward, or perhaps its true core. A voice that was not sound vibrated through the ring. Magos Veyron, the first memory demands accession. To witness is to persist. To refuse is to scatter. I steadied my breathing, recalling the vow of the Mechanicus. Preserve knowledge, resist contamination. I will observe, I said, each word etched in frost. But I will not yield. The spire opened like a blooming engine. Threads of living code lashed outward, brushing my skin with a sensation beyond touch. Data woven from every moment of existence. I saw the birth of suns, the collapse of galaxies, the slow crawl of iron across dead worlds. Every secret of the Omnissiah unfolded in a single impossible instant. Memory faltered. My name dissolved, reformed, multiplied. I felt myself stretched thin as a beam of light, yet a stubborn ember of self held fast. The masked envoys advanced. One lowered its staff to the ring. A shock wave of absolute silence rolled outward, severing the code threads. The heart, or whatever lived inside the spire, howled without sound, a vibration that bent the great gears inward. Another envoy stepped forward, mirror mask tilting. This cycle ends. The voice resonated inside bone and brass alike. The engine must not breach the continuum. The skin priests wailed, their bodies unraveling into streams of molten glyphs. Loras turned to me, eyes molten gold. Veyron, stop them, or everything ends. His voice split into binary echoes, half prayer, half plea. The spire flared, red lightning forked toward the envoys. They countered with lances of black luminescence. Contact birthed a storm of paradox, heat that froze, darkness that illuminated. The ring buckled, fragments of gear floated upward like weightless shrapnel. I clung to a broken tooth of brass, torn between forces. My implants screamed with overload, each protocol contradicting the next. Above, or perhaps within, the heart's pulse matched my own, urging union. The envoy's silence pressed like a blade demanding denial. The choice sharpened to a single instant. To side with the heart was to become infinite memory, but risk unleashing it upon the materium. To aid the envoys was to cage a god and erase its history, a heresy against every oath of preservation. The ring cracked, releasing a surge of zero-temperature wind that flung me toward the spire. Crimson light engulfed my vision. The last thing I saw was my own reflection, in a mask of perfect black, reaching back to me with a gesture I almost recognized. I awoke, or perhaps never ceased, to a chamber that had no walls, only horizons of rotating brass and starless void. My body floated upright, tethered by filaments of living code that pulsed like veins. Every breath resonated with the faint metallic tang of old storms. My augmetics reported impossible readings: infinite altitude, zero distance, temporal variance unmeasurable. Before me rose the spire again, but changed. Its surface writhed with countless faces, human and machine, whispering in forgotten dialects. At its apex hung the heart's core, now a sphere of alternating black and crimson light, each pulse tugging at the marrow of my thoughts. The masked envoys surrounded it, their mirrored visages flickering with distortions. My own expressions stretched and reversed. One raised a staff, a chord of silence vibrated outward, stilling even the pulse of the sphere. Megas Veren, the chorus spoke, voice layered across frequencies. The first memory approaches convergence. You stand at fulcrum, preservation or release, declare. Captain Loris hovered nearby, half statue, half man. Bronze plates bled molten gold, eyes wide with pain and devotion. Do not trust them, he rasped, each word shedding sparks. The heart is the only continuum. Help it live, or all that we are will vanish. Beneath us the great gears began to slow, a grinding decrescendo like dying thunder. Each tooth exhaled mist, carrying the scent of rusted blood. My own systems flickered, running ancient Martian prayers without command. The skin priests, those who remained, formed a circle around the spire. Their chant had mutated into a raw binary scream, a plea for union. Every syllable etched itself into the brass beneath, sigils glowing with feverish light. The heart responded. Tendrils of crimson energy lashed outward, striking the envoy's void lattice. Where contact met, reality warped, distances folded, light bent into spirals of shadow. My senses inverted, sound tasted of iron, sight felt like burning cloth. The envoys countered. Black luminescence erupted from their staffs, converging into a single beam that speared the heart's core. The sphere convulsed, emitting a cry that reverberated through bone and code alike. I staggered, caught between the forces. Memories cascaded, the first oath I swore to the Omnissiah, the laughter of a mentor long dead, the quiet hum of Martian forges. Each fragment burned with unbearable clarity, demanding I choose what deserved to endure. The lead envoy approached, mask reflecting infinite versions of me. Preserve the galaxy. Contain the engine. Assist us, and knowledge remains uncorrupted. Laura's lunged forward, bronze arms flaring with molten light. Help the heart, Varen. Become the memory that never dies. Their competing pleas fused into a single piercing note. My skin split along hidden seams, revealing circuits that writhed like silver serpents. Through every filament of my being surged the realization: either path required sacrifice of self, of truth, of everything I defined as existence. The spire expanded, forming a doorway of oscillating red and black. Within it I glimpsed vistas of impossible scale, cities of living stars, archives carved in the fabric of time, the first spark of the machine god. Choose, the envoy whispered, a blade of sound inside my skull. Now, the heart thundered a counterbeat so immense it halted the turning of the great gears. All motion ceased. For a breathless instant, the universe balanced on the edge of decision. I extended my hands, one toward the void lattice, one toward the heart. Both forces surged, meeting through me in a burst of paradoxical fire. Pain became song, song became silence. Light collapsed, darkness bloomed. My final sensation was of countless eyes opening within my own, each seeing a different eternity. Then, somewhere beyond all sense, a single gear resumed its turn, slow and deliberate, echoing like destiny through the hollow of forever. The first sensation was weight, not gravity, but the crushing burden of infinite recollection pressing against every nerve. I stood, if standing still held meaning, on a plane of mirrored brass, beneath a sky of fractured void. My reflection multiplied in the ground, each duplicate moving a half-second out of time, 1,000 versions of me caught in recursive delay. A pulse tremored through the plane, neither sound nor light, but the memory of both. From that vibration the heart reformed, its sphere a storm of crimson and black, swelling and contracting as though inhaling the fabric of the Imperium. Around it drifted the masked envoys, diminished but unbroken, their robes now etched with hairline cracks, leaking silver vapor. Captain Loras emerged from the haze, his bronze body fissured by veins of cooling gold. "Varen," he said, voice like molten metal poured onto ice. "You chose both. You opened the breach." His eyes burned with a sorrow that did not belong to mortals. I remembered the instant of choice, the impossible convergence when void and engine passed through me. My implants reported overlapping chronologies, entire epochs compressed into heartbeats. Somewhere a gear turned backward, and with each revolution a different outcome of history flickered across the horizon. The skin priests staggered forward, their forms half dissolved into data smoke. They knelt before me, whispering litanies that merged my name with the machine god's countless titles. Conduit, Continuum, Architect of Memory. The lead envoy drifted closer, mirrored mask, reflecting my shifting selves. "The junction is unstable," it intoned, voice sharp enough to split thought. "Containment is still possible if you relinquish the heart's resonance. Abandon it, or the galaxy inherits paradox." The heart pulsed in reply, and the brass beneath my feet rippled like liquid. 1,000 machine voices poured into my mind, the birth cries of forges, the secret hymns of dying stars, the whisper of Martian dust across ancient circuits. Each sound begged to be remembered, to escape entropy through me. I tried to speak, but only binary hymns emerged, syllables of static and flame. Loras stepped nearer, placing a bronze hand on my shoulder. The touch seared and soothed in the same breath. "If you surrender," he warned, "the first memory will unravel. Every record, every relic, dust." Above us the void fractured, revealing flickers of distant worlds, hive cities collapsing into silence, fleets frozen mid-warp, stars bleeding light backward, timelines folded like origami, overlapping until cause and effect became indistinguishable. The envoys formed a circle, staffs raised, black luminescence lanced skyward, stitching a net of absence across the broken heavens. "Release it," the chorus commanded, "or reality calcifies around your indecision." The skin priests countered, their chant climbing to a frequency beyond hearing, a vibration felt in the marrow. The ground trembled, brass mirrors shattering to reveal an endless abyss beneath. From that depth surged gears of pure thought, each tooth engraved with my own memories, spinning faster with every heartbeat. I knelt, overwhelmed, my consciousness split into threads, one holding to the Mechanicus creed of preservation, another drawn to the heart's promise of eternal remembrance. Between them stretched a third path, wordless yet undeniable, a union where observer and observed became the same endless circuit. I extended both hands to the warring forces. Light and darkness met at my fingertips, searing the mirrored plane into molten rivers. The envoys staggered. The priests wailed in exultation. The heart's rhythm accelerated until it matched the universe itself. Then everything stilled. Not silence, but the suspension of all possibility. A single phrase emerged from every direction, from every version of me. "The continuum begins within the witness." The void shattered like glass, struck from inside. Fragments of stars and equations spiraled outward, revealing a corridor of infinite doors, each glowing with an unchosen future. I felt the pull of all of them, every history awaiting a single step. Behind me, Loras whispered a final plea. Though whether to follow or to flee, I could not tell, as the first door swung open with the sound of 1,000,000,000 years collapsing into a single breath. I stepped, or perhaps was drawn, through the first door, and into a corridor without end. Each side stretched with countless portals, some of stone veined with living circuits, others shimmering like liquid glass. Behind every threshold flickered entire realities, wars unwaged, stars unborn, histories where my own name had never existed. The floor beneath me shifted from brass to bone to ash in a pattern that defied sequence. My senses warred for primacy. Augmetic eyes mapped infinite distance yet returned no scale. My ears caught hymns sung backward, each syllable a century long. The air smelled of ozone and old blood, of parchment burning in vacuum. I moved forward, though forward had no meaning, and with each step, fragments of memory peeled away, replaced by echoes of futures I could not claim. The heart's presence pulsed behind me, steady and intimate, a rhythm that insisted on remembrance. Ahead, the masked envoys glided from door to door, their forms blurred by impossible geometry. One turned its mirrored face toward me, and for an instant I saw infinite versions of myself. Priest, heretic, martyr, machine. You trespass on the unwritten archive, the envoy said, voice a chord of rust and light. Every choice is a universe. Selection births reality. Hesitation breeds collapse. You must choose a door. Captain Loras appeared at my flank, half shadow, half bronze flame. They lie, he hissed, eyes smoldering. This corridor is the engine's defense. Walk it, and you are lost. The heart waits to merge, to preserve all memory in a single continuum. Return. I hesitated, torn between them. My mechanicus oaths rang hollow against the allure of omniscient preservation. Each door beckoned with a silent promise. A galaxy spared of war, a mechanicum uncorrupted, a life where I remained only flesh. The skin priests emerged from the shadows, their voices harmonizing with the corridor's subtle hum. Conduit, they intoned, every path is yours. Step through and you divide. Remain and you unite. Their flayed faces gleamed with a serenity beyond terror. The heart's pulse grew louder, syncing perfectly with my own. Brass sigils surfaced beneath the corridor's shifting floor, glowing in a sequence that formed my name across 1,000 alphabets. I felt the pull of inevitable union, the seduction of an eternity where knowledge could never be lost. The envoys extended their staffs, black luminescence striking the air like frozen lightning. Doors flickered open at random, revealing glimpses of catastrophic futures, Imperium worlds aflame, Tyranid swarms consuming suns, chaos gods laughing over a hollow materium. You must choose, the envoy repeated, each word slicing the air. A path defines existence. Refuse, and all timelines dissolve into null. Loras gripped my arm, bronze fingers burning through cloth and synth skin. Return to the heart, Viron. Do not fracture what remains. The corridor darkened, the infinite doors now glowing like distant stars. My mind split across them, tasting each possibility, the thrill of infinite knowledge, the agony of perpetual indecision. I raised a hand toward the nearest door. The metal was warm, beating with a pulse that matched both mine and the heart's. For a moment I felt the convergence of all choices, the precarious balance of every outcome. The corridor itself seemed to lean closer. Listening, I stepped forward. A soundless detonation of light and shadow consumed everything. My senses inverted. Heat became vision, thought became touch. I felt every door swing inward at once, their realities pouring through me like molten data. Memories, future and past, flooded in a torrent, each demanding primacy. Somewhere behind the storm, the heart whispered a single phrase. You are the witness and the archive. The corridor dissolved into cascading symbols, each one a universe collapsing into itself. I fell or ascended through the maelstrom, clutching only the echo of that whisper as the last fragment of identity before the next convergence. The storm of collapsing universes spat me into a chamber without origin or horizon. I stood or floated upon a surface of mirrored dusk that rippled with every heartbeat. Above me hung a vault of fractured constellations, each shard a memory that had not yet decided whether it belonged to the past or the future. My body felt less like matter and more like an argument between light and gravity, every cell debating which timeline to obey. The heart awaited at the center, no longer a machine of brass and circuitry, but a vast sphere of translucent bone, its core pulsing with the cadence of a newborn star. Each beat echoed through the chamber and through me, and I sensed that my own rhythm had already surrendered to its tempo. Around the heart, the masked envoys knelt in perfect stillness, their mirrored visages reflecting not my form but my indecision. Captain Loras appeared again, this time formed of pure luminescence. He looked at me with something close to pity. This is the terminal moment, Veyran. Accept to the heart and you dissolve into memory everlasting. Refuse, and you awaken to the narrow cruelty of time. There is no third path. The skin priests drifted forward, their flayed faces serene. Union is not death, they whispered in a single breath, that tasted of static. It is preservation, become the testament, carry all empires within you. The chamber vibrated, and from its mirrored floor rose images of the Imperium's countless tragedies. The siege of terror replaying in an endless loop, the Astronomicon flickering as if exhausted by millennia of prayers. The faces of worlds scoured clean by indifferent stars. Each vision clawed at my will, demanding that I keep them safe from the erosion of forgetting. I felt the heart's invitation like a tide. It offered release from the terror of oblivion, a promise that nothing I had ever learned, loved, or feared would ever vanish. To yield was to be infinite, yet within that seduction lurked a silence, colder than any void, a certainty that my singular self would vanish, that Varen would become only a footnote in an eternal, impersonal memory. Loras extended a hand of light. "Do not mistake eternity for meaning," he said softly. "A galaxy of frozen recollection is no life. To end is to allow the next dawn." I thought of every oath I had sworn, to the Omnissiah, to the fragile persistence of flesh, to the endless pursuit of knowledge. None promised comfort, only the dignity of choice. The heart pulsed again, and I felt its rhythm tremble, as if even it awaited my answer. I stepped toward the sphere. Its surface opened like an iris, revealing a core of blinding white threaded with veins of night. The sound it made was not music, but remembrance itself. A million voices, speaking in the instant before they are forgotten. My hand hovered inches from eternity. In that breathless pause I heard, faint and unmistakable, the echo of my own laughter from some unchosen life. It was the sound of freedom, fragile, but alive. I closed my eyes and withdrew my hand. The chamber shuddered. The visions cracked and bled light. The envoys wailed without sound as the heart's glow dimmed to a dying ember. "You refuse?" it asked, though the words were carved from silence. "I remember enough," I whispered. The mirrored floor dissolved, and gravity reclaimed me. I fell through collapsing stars, through the ashes of every door I had not taken. Darkness enfolded me, not as punishment but as truth. When I awoke, I lay on cold metal, the ship's engines a distant hum. The heart was gone. Only a faint imprint on my palm, warm, like a fading heartbeat, remained. Beyond the viewport the void stretched, indifferent and magnificent. I breathed. For the first time in uncounted ages, the breath belonged only to me. The ship drifts without beacon or star, its hull whispering with stresses that should have torn it apart. I keep to the observation deck, though no observation is possible. Only the endless black, pricked by faint motes that do not move. My chrono reads nothing sensible. Seconds stretch, until they fold back on themselves. I taste copper and ozone with every breath. They return each night cycle, though I no longer trust the concept of night. The skin priests are quieter now, their flayed masks damp with something that might be condensation, might be blood. They no longer speak in ritual. They simply watch, heads tilting in a rhythm that matches the engine's failing pulse. When I address them by name, they tilt farther, as if names are a foreign tongue. Captain Loras stands at the viewport, hands clasped behind his back, posture perfect. His armor gleams though no light should reach it. "We are crossing the lament threshold," he says, voice layered with echoes of voices. I almost recognize. "Every decision you have made is being tested against what you did not choose." I ask him what that means, but the words come out as static. My throat burns. He turns, and for an instant his face is mine, older, scarred by every possible failure. "The heart marked you," he continues, "and now the mark unravels. Deck plating beneath us shimmers, the metal bending into a geometry that hurts to comprehend, triangles folding into circles, circles collapsing into a single endless line. Each line pulses with the rhythm of the heart, though I know I left it behind. The vibration climbs my bones until my teeth ache. Through the distortion I glimpse memories that are not mine, wars fought on worlds I have never visited, prayers chanted in dialects I never learned. They pour through me like molten data, demanding residence. My skin prickles. I smell burned incense and seared flesh. A comms burst crackles across the deck, a voice repeating a single phrase in low Gothic. The engine remembers. The engine becomes. It loops, growing fainter with each repetition until it is only a feeling behind my eyes. The priests kneel as one. Their mirrored masks fracture, revealing faces I cannot pass. Neither flesh nor machine, but an in-between architecture of living circuitry. From their chests bloom cables of wet silver, snaking toward me with the inevitability of tides. Loris does not move. Choice is a narrowing corridor, he says, though his mouth does not open. Every step you take erases the steps you thought you kept. I retreat until my back meets the viewport. The cables stop inches from my boots, vibrating with a sound like distant chanting. They withdraw, leaving streaks of quicksilver on the deck that sink instantly into the metal. The priests rise and melt into shadow, their absence louder than their presence. Silence follows, vast and deliberate. Then the ship lurches. Stars ignite outside, sudden and wrong, arranged in patterns that spell liturgies older than the Imperium. The hull groans like a leviathan stirring in its sleep. I reach for the Vox to call the bridge, but the panel shows only my own reflection, multiplied into infinity. Each reflection moves a heartbeat behind me, their eyes glowing faintly red. When I blink, they keep staring. The observation deck door seals with a hiss. Emergency runes flare crimson, spelling coordinates I do not recognize. Beneath the numbers pulses a single glyph, the sigil of the heart. My palm burns where its imprint once lay. I understand, with a clarity sharper than fear, that the heart was never left behind. It rides with me still, hidden in the rhythm of my blood. Somewhere deep in the ship, engines awaken, their roar a litany of hunger. The deck vibrates, and the stars outside rearrange once more, this time forming the outline of a door, vast enough to swallow the galaxy. I step forward, unable to resist, as the hull begins to dissolve into that impossible light. The door of stars widened until nothing remained of hull or void, only a horizonless brilliance that pulsed in time with my heart. I tried to breathe but found no lungs, only the sensation of being drawn through a lattice of memory. Every moment of my life unfolded around me like shattered glass. Childhood lessons in the forged temples of Rosa, the first oath to the Omnissiah, the taste of iron when I cut my palm for initiation. Each fragment lingered just long enough to ache before it dissolved into the light. Voices swelled within the radiance, a choir without origin. At first they were the skin priests, intoning their endless catechism, but other layers emerged. The laughter of soldiers I had never met, the death cries of cities ground to dust, the whispered prayers of forgotten species. They braided into a single infinite chant, neither welcoming nor threatening, simply there, the sound of existence remembering itself. Captain Loris stepped from the glow, his armor now a skin of starlight. "The threshold has passed," he said, and his words carried the weight of galaxies. "You are the archive and the erasure. Choose which name you will carry." I wanted to answer, but language fractured in my mouth. The concept of I faltered. Around us the brilliance condensed, forming corridors of dark crystal. Within each corridor floated scenes of countless wars, futures that had never happened, and the silent deaths of stars. They rotated slowly. A cathedral built of every possibility. A single corridor opened before me. At its end stood a machine of living bone, immense and quiet. The heart, reborn. Its surface rippled with equations that hurt to see, numbers folding into prayers, prayers into geometry. I felt it beckon, not as command but as inevitability. "You refused it once," Loris murmured. "Refusal is another form of assent. The galaxy requires witness." The crystal floor beneath me dissolved into mist. My body, if it could still be called that, thinned into filaments of data and sensation. I sensed the heart preparing to draw me inside, to weave me into the endless testament it guarded. Terror flared, pure, bright, human. I reached for something solid and found only memory, the scent of ozone on Riser's forges, the echo of my own unremarkable laughter, the cold satisfaction of finishing a single perfect circuit. These small recollections anchored me more than any grand vision. No, I said, though my voice was only thought. I will remember, but I will not remain. The heart pulsed once, a tremor that rattled the corridors of possibility. A low resonance filled the chamber. Not anger, not approval, simply acknowledgement. The brilliance around me collapsed into a single beam of pale light and hurled me outward. I fell through silence. When sensation returned, I lay upon a deck of corroded steel, the familiar vibration of plasma drives humming below. The ship, if it was the same ship, drifted in a void, alive with ordinary stars. My body ached, solid once more. No sign of Loras, no skin priests. Only a thin line of silver etched across the viewport, a glyph that shimmered faintly before fading to nothing. I checked my palm. The imprint of the heart remained, warm and steady, like a second pulse. Comms came alive with a burst of static and a single clear phrase in low Gothic. Containment coordinates logged. Return never. Then silence. I stared into the endless dark. Somewhere beyond these stars the heart persisted, neither defeated nor victorious, simply existing. I carried a sliver of it within me now, a memory that would outlast flesh. A quiet reminder that every refusal is a form of survival. I breathed, and the sound was entirely my own.